Hey, and welcome back to The Noble Marriage. I'm Travis, this is Adele, or do you want to do your
Hi. No.
Okay. And we're helping couples get healing from crisis and betrayal.
Yes, and today's episode I am so excited about because we are bringing back one of your favorites. Their first interview with us is right now, at the time of recording this video, is almost at 20,000 views.
It's our highest viewed video, and I know why. I mean,
Yes.
Brad and Lisa.
They're so transparent, so authentic. They have such an amazing story to share, and I know for me, when I'm listening to them, I want more.
Yeah, so in this video, it's the four of us having intimate conversations about our healing, the things we've gone through, the pain, the hurt.
How they were similar and yet different, the roads that we walked, because our stories are different. So let's dive into this interview. And through this conversation, our prayer is that you get hope and healing through whatever it is you're walking through today.
Brad and Lisa, thank you so much, guys, for joining us for the second time. We are so excited to have them come back on this channel. It's been about a year or so since the last time we had a conversation, and that video, you guys will have to go see that. It now, during the recording of this, just has over 18,000 views. It has been our most watched video on our channel. And I would say that a good bit of the comments that we receive, a good bit of the conversation that we hear from people that contact us, they have been dramatically impacted by your interview. I'm just reminded of Revelations 12:11, that the enemy is defeated by the blood of the Lamb and the power of the testimony. And your testimony has gone out and made such a huge impact. And we're excited for a second interview.
Yeah, you guys have brought so much hope to marriages.
Well, that is our hope.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing, which is why we love doing this with you guys, is that we do get to be those hope carriers, right? We get to point to Jesus. We get to talk about what he has done. I think that's the power of the recognition of, we don't want any of the glory and you guys don't want any of the glory. It's the recognition of who we serve and what he does. And we just want to keep pointing up to the Redeemer and the person who really does do a reconciliation work that can only come from him. So yeah, we're excited to be here with you guys.
So one of the things I would love for all four of us to really chat about is the journey of healing that we shared through Jesus and how he restored our hearts and our marriages. So I would love to hear from you guys, just what were the first initial steps that you took when you knew restoration was a possibility for you?
Man.
It all happened magically,
right?
Obviously. There was no effort or work. It just, boom, from one moment to the next, we were just magically healed.
Right.
I tried to stuff all my feelings down.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Guys, we're playing.
Wow. I think the first steps were, well, for me, it was definitely learning to surrender. Really, that's really what it was. It was just learning to surrender. I mean, I didn't forgive myself for a very, very long time, but just learning to surrender everything to God ultimately, but also to Lisa, just surrendering, giving it all, just being open. Because I had been hiding for so long, living that double life and hiding. So I think that's, for me, that was a big first step.
Yeah, it was this process of establishing guardrails in our life. It was, really learning what it meant to walk out forgiveness and put things down and find yourself picking them back up and putting it back down and then picking it back up and, realizing just how much, he had some surrendering to do and I had an immense amount of surrendering to do, which, is always ironic. We always feel like, and we tell people how unfair this process is and how, especially someone who is the betrayed, how we can try to make things quote unquote fair. And so we justify a lot of times ourselves repeatedly picking up the same things and using them as arsenal at any point when our pain is really great. And so navigating and learning what that looked like and how we actually had to recognize the fact that every time I used that arsenal, how it pulled us back into places that neither one of us actually wanted to stay, I would like to say that happened overnight, and but it didn't. It was a process that we had to learn and walk through, and how God had to teach us a lot of things in that season. I think about ourselves individually, ourselves as a couple, and ultimately in our relationship with him. He just was teaching us a lot of things.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that myself. Like, I feel like when the betrayal came out, that was for me rock bottom. And it was the first thing that really brought me to my knees, where I recognized, like, this is beyond me. And I'd always depended on myself, you know, in the past to get through everything in my own strength. And I realized, wow, I need God. Like, he's the only one that's going to get me through this kind of pain. Yeah. And so I definitely resonate with surrender as well, because that was the first time I was like, help me, God.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think it's just funny how it mirrors both sides.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, the betrayed and the betrayer, that surrendering is literally just sitting there and giving it all to God and just saying, God, help me. But it's just interesting how it mirrors both. Mm-hmm. And it's totally different paths. It just mirrors both.
Yeah.
Man, you couldn't have said it better, Brad. I was thinking after I heard the three of you talk, I want to say surrender too, but now that we've all had a chance, I have a different framework, and I think what you're saying about how it mirrors both, I think what we're all coming to is it was an opportunity for all of us to choose humility. Mm-hmm. It was an opportunity to finally discover that we do need a Savior, and He is bigger than us, that us playing God in different areas of controlling in our life was not effective. And I really resonated with you guys too. I finally surrendered, and I finally was like, I can't do this on my own anymore, and I need help, and I have no clue what to do. And then what Lisa's talking about as well is there's a lot of structures and systems that needed to be put in place at the beginning too, about creating safeguards and boundaries and accountability, and making sure we start building trust up again and creating an emotionally safe place, and a lot of details that are involved in what we're talking about, right? So
yeah, it's just so much to navigate through. And that's what we hear the most.
And I think that's the thing, is remembering that it's one step at a time. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you can hear all of these things, and I think a lot of times what we're craving so much is like, give me 7 steps to save my marriage, and like, boom, and I'll just do these 7 steps, and it's going to tell me exactly how long it's going to take, and then I'll follow that exact 7 steps. And the reality is there are steps to take, absolutely, but you need to take one step at a time, and no one can exactly tell you how long that timeline takes for healing. And there is a different process that everyone does have to kind of navigate through as God leads you through both your individual stories and as a couple. We often talk about it takes many small steps in the wrong direction to get you places you never want to go. It takes many small steps in the right direction to get you where you ultimately want to be. And so it's the recognition that every small step you take does matter, and it is taking you somewhere. And a lot of times it takes looking at your back and going, wow, we've taken a lot of steps. Like, we've taken a lot of good steps, and you get to see it then. But when you're taking them, it's hard. It's worth it, but it is hard.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, back up 1 minute. Listen to Lisa, what she just said. That was awesome.
Rewind. So I'm curious, because your story is different than ours, where, Lisa, you were really waiting on Brad for a period of time. Mm-hmm. What was that like in the surrender process of letting go of Brad when you didn't know if there was going to be restoration?
It was gut-wrenching.
I imagine.
Which I think most surrender is, right? If someone is honestly recognizing that Jesus is enough, it's usually a pretty gut-wrenching process, because it's not our human nature to get to that place. But, you know, I really did come to this, I guess, space where I would even tell people, because, you know, people like to get involved in your business if they kind of know what's going on, right? And so I remember seeing so many times where you would just get that, you know, you'd see someone and you'd see a look come over their eyes, or, you know, something in their demeanor that, and I was like, okay, they know. They know what's going on, you know? And I remember telling people, you know, I know God has a miracle for me. I just don't know if Brad's going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I just really began to live into that relationship with Christ, the fact that he talks about how he sustains us. I got to live that out. It's a daily dying to your own idea of what your life looks like.
Yeah.
And I think there's such beauty in that, because God's plan and his vision for my life was so much bigger than I could ever have eyes to see.
Right.
But it did teach me where I needed to put my eyes, right? And so I think this was a time in my life where I had to recognize that all of these things that I had set up as, I would say, safeguards in my life, the things that I really felt like these are secure things that are always going to be there. And when it wasn't there, who was I? What was God trying to teach me in those places? And how was I going to really come out the other side, regardless of the outcome? Because you can never, ever guarantee what the outcome is, because someone else has to make a decision, right? And you can't force someone else to make a decision, which is awful.
Right.
But that's the reality, is someone else has to make that decision. So I learned to pray. I learned to lay it down, and I learned to let God grow me in the middle of that place. And I did not do it perfectly. I know I said that last time that we did an interview, but I want to emphasize it again, because it can all sound like it's in a pretty little package when I say it in about 20 seconds. We're talking about getting on my knees and getting real sassy with the Lord.
Yeah.
And asking him a lot of questions, and him being so patient with me. He was just so patient to walk me through my questions, my anger, my frustration, my doubts, and ultimately in me giving him my future and whatever that looked like. And some days I did that well. Some days I did that horribly. Some days I had to repeat it all again, even though I thought I had learned a lesson. And I still have to. Isn't that kind of a sucky thing? Right? It's like the lessons that you have to keep learning, that it just comes up in different ways.
Yeah.
God's still teaching us surrender as we are navigating into adult parenting. Oh my gosh. God is still teaching us surrender, and he's using what he taught us in that season to continue to grow us, to teach us faith, and to help us to continue to walk out what he has for us in the future and trust him with it.
That's so beautiful. Just working with our couples, we have a few that are going through where one spouse is just not repentant and the other one wants it so bad. Yeah. And I would love to hear from you, Brad. I know you shared on the last interview kind of what that season was like, but what was God doing in your heart and in your life during that time where you were separated?
Well, I think for the majority of the time, I wanted nothing to do with God at all. So I was running away from him, thinking you can get away.
Right.
You can't. Newsflash. No, I was running away from God. So I think he was working on me, which sounds really weird, but I wasn't aware of it at all, because I was literally doing the exact opposite of anything you can imagine that I shouldn't be doing. I was doing it. So when he did step in, from the point he stepped in to give me this choice to turn back to him, right? From that point on, the biggest thing that I think was happening in my heart was he was just, it goes back to what you said a few minutes ago, the humility. He was ripping pride out of me. And if you would have talked to me, maybe even during that time, I don't think you would have said like, oh man, that dude's like, a prideful guy, because you have those arrogant people that walk around. And I've never really been like that. I don't think that that's what someone would point out my character, even when I was running away from God. I don't think that would have been it. But deep down, I was very prideful. I was getting to do a lot of things that a lot of people don't get to do. And I signed up for it. I was on teams that we did a lot of stuff and stuff that as like when I was growing up that I would like want to do, right? You want that adventure, you want all that stuff. And so we're traveling around the country doing all these things. And so you get this sense of pride, and it starts creeping in, even though you tell everyone like, oh no, I'm not prideful, or however you want to phrase it. Mm-hmm. You tell people that. But if you look at my life then, especially the year that I was gone from my family, it was a very prideful time. Whether it be out with a bunch of guys or out, chasing women, whatever it was, like it was a time of just this immense pride in me, thinking I could do whatever I wanted. And so there was a lot of arrogance in that. And I look back now, but what I'm saying is I don't think I was walking around arrogant, but it's this arrogance of denying God, really. I mean, that's a huge, the more I've grown in my walk with Christ, that's the term I've put on it. When I see people that deny God or turn their back on God or whatever, I just think, well, the arrogance that they have. So the working that God did on my life was ripping out this pride and showing me what it really means to have that humble heart, that servant leader that he's calling us to be, right? To show, like, really show me what that means. But, unfortunately for me, I think it took me hitting rock bottom to really, truly understand what God was calling me, what God wants me to do, like put me on earth to do. One, to be a servant leader of my household, right? And to then share the gospel. And then, the verse that I always go back to, and I think that destroys pride, is in Luke, when Jesus is like, if you want to follow me, you have to pick up your cross and deny yourself daily. And so that verse always hits me, because the group of men he was talking to at that moment, the cross wasn't this proverbial cross that we talk about today, where we're like, oh, I have to carry my cross because it's so, this thing is tough or whatever, like the cross to bear. Then when he said that, all those people knew that meant death. That was like, our electric chair, right? That meant death. And not only that, you had to carry it to where you were going to die. And so you had to carry the 600-pound piece of wood that you were ultimately going to die on. So Jesus saying that to them, like, follow me, but you're going to have to pick up your cross and deny yourself daily. Like, that is destroying pride. That is becoming the servant. That is humbling yourself ultimately for what he wants you to do. And so that was the big thing that was happening. And that took a long time. I think the initial, rip was, me falling on my hands and knees and asking for forgiveness, and then taking those slow steps back to moving back into the house. And then the slow steps of detox. I'm pretty sure I talked about it last time, but there was a long detox process of not drugs, alcohol. I was never really, into that, but it was just this flesh detox. The pornography, all the sexual stuff. It was just this detox process to get it out. And each one of those steps, now that I look back, it was ultimately God just ripping pride out of me, like one piece at a time, because I wanted to keep holding on, not knowing. I think my body's just like, no, we can still do this and hold this. Yeah. And again, that comes back to that prideful arrogance of, like, God's ultimate. And in reality, like, we're nothing. And God's put us here for a purpose, so we need to grasp that purpose. But you have to lay down your pride to do that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, brother. I love your vulnerability and willingness to share your heart and where you've been. And I imagine that was an extremely tough season in your life, especially the finding who you are part. Yeah. Did you do that?
I mean, I think eventually, right?
Yeah.
Eventually I did. And, I know who I am in Christ 100%. I live it daily. And at the same time, I have to remind myself daily. And I think it's not a bad thing. I don't think. I think it's a thing that I've had to deal with for a long time. And then the realization of God's calling you to do something, and who am I, right? Who am I that God's calling me to do something for him? And so it's that realization daily, but there is still 100%, even though I know who I am in Christ, and I'm trying my best to be the best father I can be, right? Be the father that God's called me to be the husband that God's called me to be, and still seeing that, did I trip up? Did I not do as well as I should have done? And then I think that that's where the enemy really starts whispering in your ear that you're not good enough, that you can never be good enough. And there, I don't know, there is a sense of like, you can never be good enough in all of us. But if you step in what Christ is calling you, then he's equipped you. And you just have that faith of just moving forward. I mean, for example, adult parenting, we were having a rough time. Like, I was having a rough time, and I didn't know how to do this. And I was like, my dad instincts were, this is how it should be done, right? And so I'm trying to, like, parent, and it's not working. And it just feels like chaos. And finally I was in church one day, and literally just worshiping. It was during worship service. And this was weighing on my heart all week, just this constant, just battle of what I was trying to, like, I thought my way was the best way. Right. And obviously, right, I'm older. This is what we do. Just listen. And I just felt this God telling me, just, don't you trust me? Like, with everything you say you do, but don't you do it? And man, that hit me. I didn't say a word to anyone because I was like, first of all, it convicted me a lot, so I didn't want to tell anyone. I did share it with Lisa, you know, maybe a couple days later, and she said God was telling her the same thing during the season of parenting, you know? And so, again, it was, I know who I am in Christ. I know what I'm stepping into. I know what I need to do, and sometimes I don't know how to do it. And I think that that's the point of it all, right? Of learning to be the servant and ripping that pride out of you at all times, because I felt like I knew what I was doing, but did I really take it to God and say, you know, here it is, like, what, you know? And so that hit me really hard. And I think that was another point in my life where God was slapping pride out of me at some level, you know, like, no, stop. You say you trust me, but do you really trust me? You trust me with all this other stuff. You don't trust me with this. And it was very, very powerful time. This just happened a few months ago. So I have found myself, but I don't think I'll ever find myself truly, if that makes sense. I think that there's always going to be, you know, I think it's the sanctification process, right? Like, there's always going to be something God's teaching me, but ultimately I know, and I do have to remind myself that I know who I am in Christ, and I need to step into that daily.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you mind if I share? I really appreciate you sharing all that. As you were talking, I was thinking, man, pride is one of those things that I am battling with every single day. And it's not in the sense that I always thought pride would be. It sneaks up on me in very unique and challenging ways. One of those is having a victim mentality and making it all about me. You know, and I never thought that would be prideful, but that's exactly what it is this my pride that has me doing that. And then very specifically when you were talking about pride, it landed on me that I have relationships, and this is outside of marriage, but I have relationships that I really want to restore. And when I think about it, those relationships are very important. I really want to restore those relationships. And what God has been showing me is it's still pride in me that I want the pain in me to go away more than I want the relationship to be restored. And I want the relationship to be restored. And so I'm seeing that this wrestling that I have going on that makes me miserable is still my pride that's making me feel that way. Like, woe is me. Why me? And it's still me thinking about me. So, yeah.
It's kind of crazy how the more that you dig into so many of those things, that you see a root of just pride and insecurities and all of these things that actually come up and rear their ugly head in so many different ways, you know. And I do think if we could just recognize all the enemy's tactics, and they were just, you know, we like to think of it as just like, oh, well, I'll recognize it so clearly. It's going to be so clearly labeled, and I'll just be able to avoid all of it. But it is just these tiny little seeds that are planted, and they just can come to fruition in so many different ways. And yeah, it's amazing when you really dig into it, and to see it is really beautiful thing of showing that God is continually at work in you and in us, right? And he's not finished with us. Like, it's such a beautiful thing to see that. Like, he is not finished with us. Like, he's still teaching us and showing us who he is and what his character is and what he has for us in the future. And do we trust him? Like, do we trust him?
That's it.
And it sounds so simple. It's so hard to just take our hands off of situations and entrust it to the only one who can really do anything about it, right? But it's like, you'd think that would be such a simple process, and yet it's something I think God has to just keep walking us through over and over. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? This next step, do you trust me? With your marriage, do you trust me? With that relationship, do you trust me? I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to have to navigate through.
Yeah. So we watched this video last night, and he was talking about faith and friction. And I just loved how he described faith, because hope and faith are different. Hope is you're standing there and you're waiting on God, but you're not taking action. Faith is moving through, having a breakthrough of the natural or our circumstances, the betrayal in our marriage. It's breaking through that so that we can experience the supernatural on the other side. But the supernatural doesn't come meet us. We have to actually take action and be in action in our faith that God is going to show up and that he is going to bring a miracle or whatever that looks like, and what we have to trust him in. And I just love that. And then he was saying that, you know, if you're taking action in your faith and you're not experiencing friction, you're not experiencing the enemy, then you're not doing something right. Because when you take faith and you put action to it, the enemy does not want that. And I saw that in our healing over and over. We would get closer to healing and we would be more connected, and then more stuff would surface and I would be angry and dealing with rage, you know, never experiencing that before this. And so it's just such a challenge to recognize, like, okay, if I'm going to have faith that God is going to show up in my marriage, I actually have to go grab that miracle that I'm waiting on, instead of just sitting there and waiting on him to come to me.
Yeah.
We had a pastor friend actually tell us, I think in the last month or two, he said, everybody wants the breakthrough. Nobody wants the breaking.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, well, isn't that the truth? Like, give me the breakthrough, Jesus, but the breaking, just keep that to yourself. Like, I don't want that, you know, but it's a process to walk through, for sure.
Haven't you guys seen through that process? Because I was just talking to a coaching client about this. What you're referring to, Lisa, is this more of a lack of patience, because there's a process that has to happen. And I think that you guys can agree with me that the 9 fruit of the Spirit sure is increased during this process. The process of the faith going into the friction, and then the sanctification, Brad, that you were talking about, you know, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, all of those get built during that process. It's a needed process.
Yeah, we never arrive, you know. It's always going through sanctification. He's always breaking off the things in us that don't belong there.
Smoothing out those rough edges, you know.
Right.
Pride is a big one for me too.
Absolutely. No, I love that faith, and then you hitting these friction points, because I really think that there's too many, you know, casual Christians around that are just tiptoeing through their day. And if you are a disciple of Jesus, you're gonna face battles, and you're gonna face things that happen. And aside from normal life, like, these are things that are gonna happen to you, but we can walk in it because we know that we're equipped through Christ, right? But I see too many Christians that are just walking around, just walking the streets like normal. And I think that's what you're hitting on, right? Like, the more friction, the more faith you have, you're going through these friction points, you're getting fed by Christ because you're seeking it and you're stepping in what he's wanting you to do. And through this breaking point, you know, getting through the breakthrough, doing all those things, they're not easy. And so if you're being equipped along the way, but they're not easy at all. But I think that is that, I don't want to say testing, but that is that proving ground of, am I really all about God? Am I really all about Christ? Did I really lay everything down for him? And this is the proving ground, you know. And it's scary because there are a lot of people that just want to go through their day to day, and great, it's fine that you're not having any issues or any enemy coming at you. But I also think that that's probably a reflection of your walk with God, because the closer my walk with Christ gets, right, the more rooted and grounded I become in him, the more I am getting attacked. Yes. The more my family gets attacked, like, the more these things happen. And it's not something I want to happen. It's not something like I'm sitting there waiting, like, okay, am I following God the right way? Yep, that just happened. Yep, I must be. No, I don't look at it like that, but I do look at it as, I mean, was it in Timothy where he talks about
you can't read your mind?
I know. to take, to take joy in the suffering. I don't know if that's in Timothy or not, but to take, to count it all joy.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. To count it all joy, because I know who I know who I am in Christ. I know He's equipping me, and I have the faith to get through this. And, and I am being trained up to battle the enemy. Right. And so, I've equated it to this with a few people that I've coached, or men that I've talked to one-on-one, is, like in the military, right? If you're in a non-permissive environment, the civilians don't matter, right? The enemy's not going after civilians. Your side's not going after civilians. You're going after each other, right? And so if the civilian, like in our spiritual life, the enemy doesn't care. In fact, he really doesn't care if you don't follow Christ. It doesn't matter to him. He doesn't care if you're a casual Christian. That's great, because you're just going to probably turn away other people from actually following Christ because of the way you live your life. What he cares about are the people that are really giving it all to God and trying to step into these places and having impact on lives around him and sharing the gospel, doing what God has called us all to do. Like, those are the people that the enemy cares about, because now it's affecting his side, right? And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you're walking through life right now, we all make choices, bad choices, and pay for them 100%. So I'm not saying that at all. But if you're walking through life now and you don't understand what we're really talking about when we talk about the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy, then you do need to look in the mirror and figure out where you are with your relationship with Christ. And the better that gets, the better your marriage gets, the better your parenting gets, the better everything gets.
Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. Join us next week as we continue this raw conversation all about our healing from betrayal. Don't forget to hit subscribe for weekly videos all about healing from betrayal. Here's a sneak preview of what's coming next week.
So having to let God work on Brad, because the reality was that any change Brad made just for me was not lasting, right? It's the behavior modification, not genuine transformation. And I needed genuine transformation. He was doing a work in Brad. And my job was to allow that work to happen and to trust God again. Trust God, even when facing the same hurts, even when I felt it was very unfair.
We've got some really exciting things planned for 2024. Don't forget to tune in every Tuesday at 11:30 for a new episode to help you through your journey of healing.